Okay everyone, welcome back to another video for Star Trek Online. We're gonna have to be quick about this for the anniversary bundle. I have about 90 slides to go through today, so this is gonna be a fairly long video. I'm gonna try my best to keep it as short as I can. I obviously rant quite a bit throughout these as well. We'll be going through the Starship comparisons first, going through some Starship stats of each of the 10 ships. We'll be going in order that the ships were announced. We'll, of course, compare them versus some older and comparable starships on a ship-by-ship basis, and then we'll go through the old starship traits, the old one plus the new one. There'll be 2 slides on the Defiant trait because that one's going to be potentially really strong, along with some of the old consoles that come with these ships for the Federation side, and then my little rant towards the end of whether you should buy this bundle, and then I'll have a brief TLDW at the end as well. There will be a lot of time links and a lot of other links to other external media as well in the description. This is a 10 starship bundle, so there's going to be a lot of that. So as for the starships, we do have 10 starships. They are all Federation, and they are all Federation starships that all of the Federation allies can also access. There are a couple of ships here that normally Federation allied Romulans, for instance, cannot access, and so there is going to be some value for that here as well. All 10 of these starships are also account unlocked. So starships like the TOS and Discovery Connies are going to have a lot of value in this pack for a lot of people for their skins, just based upon the fact that in the past, you would have to pay potentially around $170 equivalent inside of this game in order to get that starship for one character. And now, with $200 to $300, you can buy 10 ships, including those, and get them account unlocked for your whole account, at least on the Federation side. In terms of the starships themselves, we have 2 command starships, 1 intel, 1 pilot, 3 temporal operative, and 3 miracle worker. I wish it was just an even 2 for them all, but, well, 3 miracle worker starships isn't too bad either. For these new starships, they aren't like regular starships in the game that are from the C-Store. They all come with full in-game stats like previous Mega Bundle starships for Federation and Allies only. Each one of the new 10 starships has a new starship trait that are available to all captains because the KDF won't have any equivalent variants for this. With these, you will get all previous older version stuff with these ships, for the most part. All the old starship skins plus 1 new one, and all the old starship traits and old starship consoles. It's not particularly clear about the TOS phasers and the Discovery phasers yet, at least as of the recording of this video. I'm sure within probably the next day or so, that stuff will be out, potentially even before this video goes up to YouTube. So if that's the case, me or someone else will probably say in the comments really quickly as to whether the TOS and Discovery phasers will be in this pack or not. The things that is a big downside for this is that you do not get any new consoles with these new starships. So in a sense, for some players, that's going to be, that means they're going to be worth like, 33% less, 25 to 33% less, depending on how you think about things. And they aren't account unlocking any of the older traits and consoles for the KDF side. The KDF side, for instance, is still going to have to get the point defense weapon warhead from the low-buy store instead of just claiming it from the Zen store or C store. Just the way that it is. As for the Starship comparisons themselves, the first one announced was the legendary Defiant pilot Warship. This is a great ship. The old stuff on William Barrage is basically meta for any cannon scatter volley builds in PvE. The new trait overpowered and overgunned sounds really strong, so as long as its firing cycle haste on this thing is really strong, this trait is going to be strong regardless of its base duration. And I'll talk about that in 2 slides towards the end of this video as to why that's the case. This ship's 3-piece set, if you actually use all 3 pieces, you do get a battle cloak on her. I don't think you really need it, but it's fun for cosmetic reasons if that's what you want. In most ways, it's better than the old Fleet Defiant. You lose the experimental weapon to get an extra forward weapon, which is basically always going to give you a higher DPS amount. You lose a tiny bit amount of turning and impulse, but you get pilot maneuvers, so I think that basically counters out the smidgen amount of turning and impulse that you're losing on the Warship version. I personally still love my Rising Pilot Corvette, but I am still going to fly the Defiant from time to time as well. And if you look at the bridge officer seating, the Legendary Defiant versus the Rising Pilot Corvette, they do have very similar bridge officer seating as well. As for other ships, if you want to do true apples to apples, I would say the Ajax is probably the closest. Really, the difference is that the Ajax is a very fast escort. The Defiant is a slightly slower pilot warship, and the lieutenant pilot seat changes from the lieutenant science seat over to the lieutenant universal seat. In my opinion, I think the lieutenant side pilot is a little bit better for value personally. Science abilities don't have a ton of use for a lot of cannon-based builds in the game, so you can replace those with pilot on the Ajax. You can't do that as much with the Defiant ship. And then, of course, we have our standard Gemini Vanguard warship just here to show you most of these ships are going to be a whole lot slower and less maneuverable than the Defiant is going to be. Now, when it comes to the Enterprise D, this is probably the least impressive starship of all the starships in this pack, to put it lightly. None of the old stuff is really good. The new trait is extremely situational, and I'll get to that as to whether you actually would want to use that trait. It's a niche upon a niche market as to its traits appeal. Its bridge opportunity is a little bit better than the old Galaxy from your Tier 4 fleet. You move the command seat up to the commander slot, and you get an additional command stuff for the lieutenant side slot. I think this thing would have been fine if it was Lieutenant Science Pilot, so you could have had attack pattern Lambda, and then you could have afforded to use a lot of the other tactical abilities that you would need to make the Defiant's overpowered overgun trait to work properly for this particular ship, because this is a regular cruiser. It does not have access to dual cannons as a result of being a regular cruiser in the game. So you can't use cannon scarab volley and do some of the other things that I'll mention later on in this video. Generally speaking though, to my understanding, all of the new skins, or the new skin plus if you didn't have unlocked the old skins prior, it will be useful and usable on the Fleet Galaxy Dreadnought cruiser, which for many players, including me, I generally value a little bit higher than the regular Galaxy or even the Legendary Galaxy. Get an extra tactical ability or tactical console, access to dual cannons, and a hangar bay. Phaser Lance isn't, you know, a DPS machine by any means, but it's fun to use. And you know, when it comes to ships like this, fun is the big reason why you're flying these ships instead of other better meta-oriented ships. In terms of other ships that are kind of like flowing for the memes, you have the Fleet Cardenas, which loses a smidget of hull to get a much higher shield ratio, and still has access to dual cannons. And of course we have the Fleet Excelsior, which is here and is generally not valued highly at all because of how many engineering abilities that you're basically forced to have on the ship. Still up to you as to whether that fourth tactical console is worth the Ensign Tactical that the Galaxy can have on its ship. Now, the Kelvin Enterprise is one of those interesting starships. It's one of those that they changed a lot of from the lockbox version of the Kelvin Timeline cruiser. It's now a Battlecruiser instead of a regular cruiser, so it's got access to dual cannons. It still has 4 tactical consoles, and its commander intel. Its old console auxiliary ejection assembly is pretty nice to have for a lot of exotic-oriented builds inside the game. And so in the past, people bought the old lockbox starship for either for the looks to fly, or you'd buy it for auxiliary ejection assembly for your science builds. Now you don't need to buy that for Federation captains, so that's nice. And if you look at the raw stats, I would still say for a broadsiding tank, the Kelvin Timeline's a smidget better still. If you're going for a Kelvin Timeline feel, the Vengeance is still a little bit better of a tank though in many ways. And but looking at the raw stats here, I would still say the Vengeance has a bit better of a smidget extend over the Kelvin timeline Battlecruiser as well because it's got a hangar bay. Both have Commander Intel, Lieutenant Commander Tactical, and this ship, it moved its ensign science ability up to Lieutenant, so it is a little bit disadvantageous versus a lot of the DPS builds that, for instance, the Kelvin would feature on itself. But the Kelvin timeline ship is usable by Romulan captains. Federation ally Romulans cannot use this ship nor this one, so if you're a Federation allied Romulan wanting to fly a Kelvin cruiser, this is your one option that you have available to you if you buy this gigantic pack. Now, as for two other Intel starships, we have the Cardassian flight deck carrier, which only has 4 tactical abilities, so it can struggle if you don't use dual cannons for its British officer seating to synergize with the Defiant trait. And then, of course, we have the Sona Intel Battlecruiser. It's the other ship that's just like the Kelvin timeline cruiser, is Commander Engineering Intel, and does not have access to any cloak whatsoever. Generally speaking, for the vast majority of ships in the game besides the Sona ship and the new Kelvin timeline ship, if you have Commander Intelligence, you either get a cloak if a ship wasn't going to have one, your ship got upgraded to a battle cloak if you're a KDF starship, or it got upgraded to an enhanced battle cloak if it was a Romulan starship. These two ships are the oddball exceptions. Most people that buy the Sona ship, though, buy it for its Starship trait for torpedo builds. It's still a solid ship, though. I just have my own personal biases against it because it's a Commander Engineering Intel ship without a cloak. Now, when it comes to the legendary Odyssey, the Enterprise F, generally speaking, it's a fairly solid ship. It's the other commander or command starship that its seat got moved up to commander. It used to be for all of its variants, it used to be Lieutenant Commander Universal / Command, and then whatever variant that it was, it had that Lieutenant Commander of that particular variant. The other old variants were regular cruisers instead of Dreadnought cruisers, so this ship does have access to dual cannons and a hangar bay now that the old versions did not. As for old consoles, Adaptive Emergency Systems and Flagship Tactical Computer are really nice to have for mid-level DPS builds as well as for higher-end tank builds. And these douche rates are decent as well. Adaptive hull plating, not as much. And then comparing versus the old Enterprise Fs, pretty much the Odyssey Command Dreadnought Cruiser is just the Tactical Star Cruiser made into a Dreadnought Cruiser. And they added the extra Lieutenant Commander Science ability alongside it because the canonical Enterprise F is a Science Star Cruiser. So they basically just added that British officer's seat alongside everything else that the Tactical Star Cruiser was, and just moved that Lieutenant Commander command ability up to Commander. Other than that, for the most part, this ship is just the Tactical Star Cruiser with access to dual cannons and a hangar bay and the inspiration mechanic stuff on it too. So if you're someone that's wanting to tank in a cruiser from one of the flagships, this ship is a decent alternative, frankly. I still think the other ones are still perfectly fine. The Tactical Star Cruiser is the more easy to use one for a lot of DPS or tanking. The science one is if you're going to have a bazillion clickies and like that sensor analysis ability that the new Odyssey does not have. As for the other comparisons, I'm only going to compare this to the other 2 flagships in the game. Well, the other 2 groups of flagships because it gets the flagship set, so just comparing the raw stats makes more sense for these 2. Of the Romulan and KDF versions, I feel that the Martok Tactical Battlecruiser is the best of the Battlecruisers, and that the Engineering Dreadnought Warbird is the better version of the Scimitars. The tactical version of the Scimitars that has 5 tactical consoles unfortunately has 3 lieutenant abilities, while the Operations Engineering version still has 2 lieutenant commanders with a lieutenant and ensign seating there too. So, in my opinion, that makes this one a little bit stronger than the tactical version. You still can work around those things in the tactical version and still make the tactical one be a beast as well. These Scimitars have a 5-3 layout, while the other cruisers are 4-4. So it is something that the Scimitars do get, and these are cross faction too. Now, when it comes to the NX Enterprise, because they revealed early on that they were going to be including all the old Starship traits and consoles, basically this ship could have been complete garbage, and it still would have had a lot of value to the community because of having point defense, bombardment warhead available to all of your Federation captains and Federation allies. Additionally, the preferential targeting trait is really, really nice to have for a lot of your beam overload DPS builds. And in many ways, that's kind of what they ended up doing to the NX Enterprise, the Legendary Columbia. They made it have a little bit higher hull and shields, but its bridge officer seating has a lot to be desired. And its trait has almost no use whatsoever. Comparing it to the old NX, it has a lot. The old one has a lot more flexibility available to it, which I guess makes sense. I mean, when most people bought this old ship mainly just to get the trait or the console, and you're going to make a new version, it makes sense to make sure that the old version still feels nice, even when the new version is going to have a commander specialist seat on it. I do, in some ways, I can understand where they're kind of going with the Columbia, in that it's almost like a Husnock warship in a sense that's slightly more maneuverable, and you're relying upon your science seat for a lot of your cooldowns with Atomic Officer, instead of being able to do some Ox to Bat shenanigans with the Husnock warship. I still say for Commander Temporal Operative, Husnock is still by and large the best one in the game. The Fleet Temporal Operative warships are still pretty close as well. Even so, you still have some of the same problems with this, except you at least have 2 Lieutenant Engineerings possible with the Fleet Temporal Operative warships to make it so you could do Ox to Bat if you want. Or have other defenses available to it. With only the potential of up to 3 engineering abilities on this ship, there aren't a lot of good defensive options to use outside of using a lot of the temporal operative stuff specifically for some of your defenses. Now for this ship, for a long time in this game, I mean, I switched away from the Sovereign for a while just because there wasn't a very strong Sovereign in the game, but for my main character that I used for a long time, he was flying a Tier 5 Sovereign for a very, very long time in this game. And so if I had to say, you know, what ship was my, what is my main ship, what ship I identify with the most, it's going to be the Enterprise E. So being able to see a new legendary version of it that for a broadside and beam build is pretty legendary, frankly, is really, really exciting to see. The thing about the assault cruisers is that, just like with the classic assault cruisers, you didn't have to slot any science abilities in the ship at all. It was something that there was a couple of other ships that were like that, but when I think of starships that don't use science abilities, this is the one that I typically think of. So, unless you're wanting a Lieutenant Commander science ability here, in one of these 2 variants to get gravity well, by and large, the new Sovereign is going to be just a superior version. So yeah, just going to quickly compare it to the 2 stronger Miracle Worker ships that are reasonable to acquire. We have the Tibuk Tactical Miracle Worker Warbird from the C-Store, which is a 4/4 Miracle Worker Warbird with access to dual cannons and a battle cloak. Whenever you're comparing it, this ship is stuck with a Lieutenant Science Miracle Worker seat. So there is that downside to it. The Fleet Shepherd at least has just an ensign side, and the rest of it looks pretty similar to the Sovereign as well. If you've made the Lieutenant Commander Universal here in Engineering, which a lot of TP players probably will, because they'll use Mixed Armor Synergies 3 and Narrow Sensor Bands 3 here, and still are going to want, you know, Ox to Bat. Generally speaking, you know, the Sovereign, I think, does have a bit of an edge if you're going for a broadsiding beam array build. If you're going for cannons, obviously this ship is still a full cruiser command starship, so it cannot use dual cannons. So you're still going to want a Fleet Shepherd in that particular circumstance. Now, when I initially saw the new Discovery skin, the Glenn skin, my initial thought was, wait, isn't this just the Gagarin? And then I had to look closer, I'm like, oh, hey, there's gaps in here. And the Gagarin is just a darkened, you know, like almost like inlet, a little bit of its saucer section. But in my mind, it still gives off some of the same impressions between the two. If that was your thoughts as well, feel free to comment below as well. The legendary Crossfield, though, even though it's downgraded to a science vessel, it loses one weapon slot. It's still a 4-2 science vessel, which is pretty nice. And with Commander Temporal Operative and Lieutenant Commander Command and Lieutenant Commander Tactical, it is probably one of the better side torp DPS starships in the game. It is really good. I'm not 100% sure on the science DPS meta to know if it's going to be the best in the game, or if some of the 4-3 ships are still going to be much better. But this ship should be a solid contender in that realm. So if you're worried about, you know, that this ship's going to be weaker than the other Crossfields, as long as you go side torp, it should be okay. If you're going for side energy, then the older Crossfields are going to be stronger. If you're going for science tanking, the lockbox Crossfield is still going to be a little bit stronger, frankly. But if you're going for DPS and going torp, I think the legendary Crossfield is going to have a bit of an edge over these old Crossfields inside the game. Obviously, this isn't the first ship with Lieutenant Commander Command. There's also the Herc Assembly ship. There's also the Sona Command Science Vessel, but that ship, you really use it for a different purpose as to why you'd want to actually get that ship. The Eternal from the Sea Store is another science vessel that's very, very solid. It's been solid in the game for a super, super long time. And there's just some stats for that one. The Fleet Nautilus is a nice one as well. If you wanted something similar, you don't really get that command aspect right here, but a lot of the other things of this ship you would also be able to get from the fleet as well. Just that lacking command and you don't get a fourth weapon slot in front is really just what holds it back a teeny bit from the legendary Crossfield. The Vern is still a very nice fast ship as well, though. And of course, the Hernandez is the newest science vessel from the fleet. I guess you could debate that the Temporal ships are also pseudo-science vessels. They don't get a secondary deflector, though, so I don't really count them as that. Ethylene Ectomy is here. You buy it for its trait, though, not really to fly it. And then, of course, lastly, we have some 2 Battlecloaking ships. The L'Enclos des Moches has its gimmick, and that's why you fly it. If you're not going to fly it for the Not Cruel Time Slip gimmick, or for its Battlecloak, you typically don't fly this ship. You fly something else. The Fleet Hanom is the highest tier 5U science vessel that I found in the Starship list of everything. And well, the next to highest, at least the highest in terms of tier 5U stuff. And it still has 5 science and 4 tactical consoles, so hopefully someday Cryptic adds a tier 6 Fleet Hanom science vessel. Romulan science ships are really neglected in the game, considering that's kind of their theme, because, you know, auxiliary powers makes your ability to cloak even better. Makes it harder for enemies to see you, so it's kind of surprising that they don't have more battle cloaking science vessels. Now for Voyager, this is an interesting discussion. It does have higher hull and shields than what its old variant did. I mean, its biggest gimmick of it all, of why you want to fly the Voyager, is either because of its looks, or because you want to use the Ablative Generator console, which is the highest bonus damage resistance rating console in the entire game. It boosts you all the way up to 90% resistance for 15 seconds. And yes, with bonus damage resistance rating, you can exceed the 75% resistance cap temporarily for the duration of your clicky consoles. So yes, it can exceed that. It can exceed the cap, and you can become really durable with it. If you're going to use that console, you have to go side torp. And as we just discussed, the legendary Crossfield is a better side torp starship, with its bridge officer seating and such. Maybe the extra universal console can make up a little bit for that, but I think Commander Temporal Operative with Lieutenant Commander Command is still going to be too much than what even one universal console is going to be able to make up for that for exotic torpedo damage. Generally speaking, in my opinion, if you're picking the Intrepid and are going for an actual stat reason, you're picking it because you want a more durable science vessel, and you're going side torp. If you're doing something else, there are many other options to go for instead. I do think by and large it is a much needed upgrade over the Fleet Intrepid, especially for its exclusivity in the Fleet military. This is one of the more lackluster ships in the game. You have to get to tier 5 military to buy the Fleet Intrepid, which is a little insane considering that all you would get is a lieutenant special seat for a military tier 5 starship. A little insane in my opinion, and it's why you don't see a lot of Fleet Intrepids out there. Not only because it's a lackluster seating, but because it takes tier 5 military to get that ship too. So if you're wanting an endgame Intrepid, especially if you didn't have access to a tier 5 military, this might be a decent option for you. I don't think the Lieutenant Commander pilot's going to matter too much. There is one pilot ability, I can't remember the name of it because I barely ever use pilot besides for Attack Pattern Lambda, but there is a pilot ability in which you can summon fighters for a short amount of time. So if you want to lean in on the multi-mission science vessel aspect of the ship with its hangar bay, you could use that ability and potentially having another group of fighters with you beyond the Delta Flyers that you're going to launch out with this starship. So you can do that if you wish. Otherwise, it's probably just going to be regular engineering abilities in that bridge officer slot. And of course, we have the Herc assembly ship again, another great torpedo science starship, but no commander specialist seat. And then of course, the sphere builder is a solid for science damage in the game as well. I nickname this quite often just the giant eyeball. That's just what it looks like to me. You've got the eye, the iris, and you've got whatever it's called, the eye socket around the eye as well. That's just how I think of it personally. Of course, there's also the multi-mission vessels from the Sea Store as well, from that big multi-mission science vessel mega bundle. I like the tactical version the best, but technically the engineering version would line up a bit more with what the Intrepid is trying to do with its bridge officer seating as well. Then of course we have the research science vessels from the fleet. Unfortunately, you only get a smidget higher hull than what that earlier tier 5 Science Warbird is able to give you at the cost of losing 2 tactical consoles. If that's worth it to you, this might be a decent option for you, and it is technically the highest hull science vessel that I'm aware of that's available from the fleet. There definitely could be stuff that has higher hull that has a secondary deflector. I just can't think of any that have a higher hull offhand right now as of making this video. And of course, I'll conclude this section with showing off 2 science dreadnoughts, because the hull and shield ratio of the legendary Intrepid exactly matches the Cardassian science dreadnought. So you lose a lot of mobility on this science dreadnought to get that extra weapon for science dreadnoughts. And then it also has Lieutenant Commander Tactical for a little bit more offensive capability. As for the other one, I think is decent. Basically, besides the 2 that are in promotion packs, is the Paradox Temporal Dreadnought. Even though it says Temporal, it doesn't have a Commander Temporal seat. It's Lieutenant Commander Intelligence and Lieutenant Tactical. but it has very respectable hull and shield ratios considering all of that. And we get to this ship. This is an interesting one. And I expected this ship to get a much harder nerf versus the promo pack version than what we're actually getting in this pack. I'm pleasantly surprised about it. I don't know for sure, again, if we are getting access to the advanced phaser beam arrays from this ship or not. If we are, then they are the meta beams to use if you're going for a beam-oriented build with any Starship on your Federation characters. The bridge option of this changed a little bit, more than that. Whenever you compare it to the old flight deck carrier, it was a Miracle Worker command seating for this one. This one is Temporal Operative, just Temporal Operative. They moved up its Ensign Science all the way up to Lieutenant Commander, and they downgraded the Lieutenant Commander tactical down to Lieutenant, and they also moved one of its engineering consoles over to Science. That's actually the most fascinating thing to me, actually, is that with Temporal Operative stuff, they let it have 4 Science consoles. So yes, comparing these two ships, definitely the promo pack Discovery flight deck carrier is much stronger. But I mean, you could have recursive sharing 3 with this Starship. You know, you could do temporal shenanigans with her and still probably do decent damage. Nowhere near like what the Husnock Warship's going to be able to do for you, but it's still, I think it's still going to be respectable. I think that's what it comes down to. Now, obviously, if we're comparing to other flight deck carriers, there aren't a lot of them with a Commander Specialist seat, which I think is why they were okay with leaving this ship as a flight deck carrier. If we had many other flight deck carriers in the game already, they probably would have not let it have a Specialist seat here, or at least if they did, it probably would have been Temporal Operative. It probably would have been Command. The Silvan Silic is a solid flight deck carrier from the fleet. It does not have access to a Commander's Special seat, but it still is very respectable with a Battle Cloak available to it as well. Voth Rampart is the other one I thought was close-ish to this ship. It's 4-4 instead of 5-3, but a lot of its seating is relatively similar as well. In reality, though, if we're going to be honest and fair with ourselves, the new Discovery flight deck carrier is most similar to these starships. And I've talked about them before. If you're wanting to play a pseudo-science build on a cruiser, these two ships are ones that you can easily pick and make it work. The Narendra has temporal abilities just like the flight deck carrier does, and the Daystrom Science Miracle Worker Cruiser has an extra universal console because it's Commander Miracle Worker. Now it's definitely not meta to do this, but you can, and I've done like a video or two talking about for science torp tanking with the ships of some ways to do it. The meta has changed a little bit. Well, actually it's changed a lot thanks to the Discovery reputation, and that torpedo that'll be going into the lineup for those torpedoes in there. There's better ways to do it. For side torp tanking, these ships are decent options, and the new Discovery flight deck carrier has that option available to it as well. Now, with that being said, you still could easily, just make it Lieutenant Commander Tactical here, and you can still use the Defiance trait really well. A little bit harder to do aux to bat. You'll probably need to use one of these abilities here for Photonic Officer 1 or 2. But it's still a solid, decent starship with 2 hangar bays, still has access to dual cannons, so this is still a very respectable starship. It's just no longer like the OP level status that the old Miracle Worker flight deck carrier was. And now, of course, the last one. And to be frank, this ship could have been complete garbage, and people would have still bought the pack for the simple reason that they would have had a tier 6 Connie, the real Connie for a lot of people, and and have it be a count unlocked for all the Federation captains. I am surprised this ship is as strong as it is, and Cryptic let it be this strong. It still is. It still has its issues for sure. And if you're looking at the nerfs, it is a 4-4 starship now instead of 5-3, but its base stats are basically the same for hull and shields. It does lose a little bit of turning, and it no longer has its very strong commander and 3 lieutenant commander abilities, which would have been really strong for a particular other trait in this video that's still very situational. Its 2 lieutenant commander abilities are downgraded to lieutenant with an additional lieutenant engineering added in. It's double miracle worker here, and then you've got a lieutenant commander universal ability here just to round it out. To be honest though, this lieutenant commander universal needs to be tactical for the ship to work properly. You don't really have much of an option there. It's not like the Sovereign, in which you could choose engineering or tactical here, and it works both ways. The TOS, TMP, light cruiser, you really need this lieutenant commander universal to be tactical. And with that being said, both these ships, the legendary Sovereign and the legendary original Connie, do line up similarly, and just that the legendary Connie turns a little bit easier at the cost of a lot of hull and a little bit higher shields. So I mean, it's really up to you. I mean, a lot of people will fly the Connie. One of my characters is going to fly this new Connie because it's the Connie skin, so why not? From a stat perspective, my personal opinion is the legendary Sovereign in many circumstances is just going to be better. You just have to work around it. It's a little bit lower shield ratio. Then of course we have the 2 Miracle Worker starships from the Sovereign slides. And if you do this comparison, the legendary Connie has the same hull as the Fleet Shepherd with slightly higher shields, with the downside that its engineering, or that its bridge opportunity is slightly worse than the Shepherd's. So, and this ship also doesn't have access to dual cannons either. Of course, as I said, most people that choose the Enterprise are choosing it for its looks, and the rest of it is secondary. Okay, so for starship traits, I'll start off with the old ones. Then we're going to go to and talk about the Defiance trait, and then quickly go over the rest of the other new traits in this list. So for old traits, I'll start off with the 3 starships with multiple traits. Both of the Enterprise E's traits are pretty garbage, or very situationally okay. The Discovery's trait Black Alert is fun to use. It's not I'm not sure that it's particularly optimal. I mean, if you're using Beam Overload and Intel stuff combined, maybe it works good for you. For me, it's more of just fun to use in shuttles. It's fun to see the chaos that ensues during there. The other Discovery trait from the Mirror Discovery, so a lot of people don't have this trait actually, is called Terran Machinations. This is really good for exotic damage and for energy damage. So if you have a science energy build, Terran Machinations is going to be very, very good for you. It's kind of like Checkmate, except Checkmate is for exotic damage and for torpedo damage. So in essence, you know, if you just wanted 2 traits that do more exotic damage for you, Checkmate and Terran Machinations could be useful. Although, again, I'm not someone who's in the science DPS meta. I don't know if you would really want to slot both. There's probably many other better options to use to enhance one type or the other. There has to be something more. That'd be much better. Supercharged weapons, what was a solid DPS trait a long time ago, there are many other strong damage traits today, frankly, and that you don't have to have a torpedo anymore on a lot of your energy builds as well. You still will on Polaron though, because of the morphogenic 3-piece set. Adaptive Hull Plating is just garbage. Don't worry about that trait. As for the other old traits, these traits are garbage. The Defiance old trait, Withering Barrage, is pretty good. Cannon Scatter Volleys is increased by 4 seconds, so it has almost 100% uptime, which is very, very strong for PvE cannon builds. Preferential Targeting is a super strong trait for Beam Overload builds, because then you can have Beam Overload and then just use Cannon Scatter Volley in like in a spare Lieutenant Tactical seat, and you can increase your Beam Overload damage by a lot. I haven't used this trait recently. The STO Wiki says 100%. Several of the builds on STO Reddit say 50%. And I was too lazy to check this inside the game before making this video. If it's 50%, so be it. It still does a relatively good increase to damage for your Beam Overload ability for the duration of Beam Overload. Actually, Beam Overload is 15 seconds, but yeah, if you have super weapon ingenuity. The two enterprise traits are there to serve for extra survival if you need it on your ship. There are better survival traits out there. Built to Last is much more of a reactive healing method. Plot Armor is more of a passive trait to put on your starship. You know, for whenever you start getting pelted by some really annoying stuff. Like if you're starting to get pelted by a ton of torpedoes, at least you've got some survival against those for a little bit over the next few seconds. Whether it's going to be in your build depends upon how you've built it, how much damage you have, and how much survival you actually need on your build to make it work. Okay, so for this trait, Overpowered and Overgunned is the new Defiant trait. We don't know the full stats of this thing yet. I'm sure we'll get it within the next couple days, the next 10-4 weekly, assuming that it doesn't crash within like 10-15 minutes like it has like the past month or two. They'll definitely talk about this trait for sure. The point about this trait is that it claims that activating a weapon enhancing ability is going to improve weapon haste dramatically for a short time. Those weapon enhancements includes Beam Fire Will, Beam Overload, Cannon Scatter Volley, and Cannon Rapid Fire. It also said in the trait that the duration can increase with global critical strike chance up to double this short duration at 50% critical chance, and this is global critical strike. So it's not like you could use a different ability that gives you a lot of critical chance for like exotic damage, for instance. It has to be critical chance for everything for this to work properly. Now, if the haste isn't dramatic like the trait is claiming that it's going to be, then it's not going to be good. If the haste is dramatic, it basically doesn't matter how short the duration is. I don't expect it to be any less than 2 seconds, and if it's just 2 seconds, it's going to be good enough for DPS builds. Why? For this simple reason right here. Beam enhancements and cannon enhancements have different global cooldowns. Now, they're both 15 seconds, but those global cooldowns are independent of each category. You can have Beam Overload going at the same time of Cannon Scatter Volley, for instance. It's the same reason why preferential targeting works so well for Beam Overload builds, because they can put a cannon, they can put Cannon Scatter Volley on their build along with Beam Overload and use them at the same time and not worry about it. Effectively, what this means is that if you are creative and time abilities properly instead of just have them all go at once, you can actually, with these two different global cooldowns, unless they patch this out, you can effectively just with that double the duration of this dramatic weapon cycle haste without any critical chance on your build. Which means if you have high critical chance and already have that amount doubled, you can do this chaining effect and quadruple the length of whatever the listed duration actually is. So I decided to make a very simple table, just give you some hypotheticals with 3 different scenarios of its listed duration, and then if you chain it and have Beam Overload and Cannon Scatter Volley, because those are going to be your 2 generally good ones for PvE in terms of damage. And I've also included 3 different types of players. A new player that is their first time getting to level 65, and they have nothing in their passive Endeavor system, and they don't have anything in Bridge Officers or Consoles to add any crit in terms of what this trait's actually going to give them. Average DPS players have 25% crit, It's not that difficult to get that amount today. If you really need help getting there, even as a tank player, I can easily get you to there, no problem. High-end DPS players, you add a couple of other things, other unique consoles and things, and you can get here as well. But generally, what it comes down to is, if it's just a 2-second duration, for instance, for a new player, if they do this chaining, it's still going to be up 26% of the time, assuming that they have their cooldown management done properly on their build, so that their abilities are going to be up every 15 seconds for these weapon enhancements. For average DPS players, it could be anywhere from 20 to 40. And then for high-end DPS players, if they do this, a 2-second duration is still going to have this haste up 50% of the time. So again, as I've been saying, if the haste is good for damage, it's going to be meta for the energy builds in the game. And of course, if it's 3 seconds, average DPS players is going to get to the point where I think that they could value from this trait as well. High-end is going to become kind of ridiculous, and if it's 4 seconds, well, high-end could have this up 100% of the time, and they can have it as an almost permanent extra firing cycle haste for their ship in general. Realistically, my personal guess is, assuming that they don't patch this aspect out, they're probably going to make this 3 seconds. If I'm going to be perfectly honest with you, it's probably going to be 3 seconds. If they don't think 3 seconds sounds good for this to sell, maybe they'll make it 4 seconds, and then high-end DPS players will start abusing this really hard. I'm just saying, this trait is, like, assuming that the haste is dramatic, this is going to be a very good trait. And it's something that you definitely need to watch out for, especially for a lot of the DPS chasers inside of the game. Alright, so for the rest of the new traits, make it so captain abilities allow you to get an extra 1.5% damage or healing for each rank of bridge ability is active, and it lasts for 30 seconds. Unfortunately, a lot of the captain abilities aren't super spammable in the game, besides for tactical, with the ability called Go Down Fighting. If you have that, if you're a tactical captain and have the trait A Good Day to Die from the exchange, then Make It So might be situationally useful for you if you value both the damage and the healing for you. Most likely this is going to be for energy tank builds inside the game that maybe need a 5th Starship trait as a more active / passive version of extra threat and for extra survival for a particular starship. I don't think it's going to be meta. It is a survival trait option that gives you more damage though, so there is that. The Kelvin timeline trait is garbage, don't worry about that one. Continuing mission is a trait, assuming that it works like how it's described. It sounds like it's going to be good for nanny type builds. So if you're one of these super out there people that does a build like that, continuing mission might be one of those new traits that you put on your starship. The NX trait is garbage for one specific reason, and it's because it does not bypass minimum cooldowns. If it did, it would be a decent, although slightly subpar, alternative to Super Weapon Ingenuity. That is the trait that increases beam overload's duration by 5 seconds. I think this could have been a decent alternative to make it so that instead of it having to be 15 seconds, you have to have 100% uptime on your beam overload. Instead, you maybe could have had this trait and make it so you had to constantly spam whole heals to get your beam overload to have nearly 100% uptime. So effectively, you would have lost essentially an additional bridge officer ability with this trait to keep beam overload at nearly 100% uptime. I think that would have been a perfectly fine consolation. High-end builds would have still never used this thing, but people that only buy C-Store starships could have seen this and found value for it, especially because there's so many beam overload stuff in the anniversary bundle that just, to me, that just seems something very, very obvious to add. But that's just me personally. The Enterprise Ease trait, transcranial sensor link, because it stacks infinitely until map move. I see this being very, very good for the Kobayashi Maru scenario, because you have an endless amount of enemies to destroy. This thing's gonna stack up to your until you have 100% shield pen, and then also on Junior Gauntlet Elite, where you have so many enemies that you're destroying in such a short amount of time, and the enemies keep on spawning for those couple of in phase 2 and phase 3 until the duration ends, that this trait could and will be meta for those two specific maps. Most people don't play those two specific maps though, so for the vast majority of players, and for the vast majority of builds and situations, I do not think this is going to be optimal, unless the stat for shield pen is so ridiculously high that people want to use this trait. I doubt they would have made it and designed it that way though, so probably just Kobayashi Maru and Junior Gauntlet Elite is all you would really use this trait for. Discovery's trait is called Temporal Anchor. Your gravity will do extra damage, chance to add ability cooldown times, and stop temporal travel. I don't know particularly what this means. Hopefully someone can clarify that in the comments. But generally for science builds, over and over, it's gotten to the point that for a lot of your higher end science builds, it's gotten to the point that most of them don't really want to use improved gravity well anymore. So for a lot of them, where they're wanting to kind of get rid of that for something else better, if this trait does good enough damage, maybe they replace one of their science damage traits with Temporal Anchor. Voyager's trait, Extensively Modified Warp Core, that is for Tour of the Galaxy. If you don't care about Tour of the Galaxy, or already have enough energy, already have a good enough build that Tour of the Galaxy has already given you, your million energy credits each day for that, not really a trait you need to worry about. And as for our two remaining traits, both of those depend upon the stats. They're both traits that add extra damage, so if the stats are good enough, then they're going to be good traits. If the stats are not good enough, then they're going to be bad traits. That's what it comes down to. Okay, so for the old consoles and weapons, I'm going to be going super quick in these. Most people have already done extensive discussions about these in the past on SGO Reddit when a lot of these things initially came out. There's plenty of great discussions on them, so it's not going to be that hard to look a lot of this up. The Defiant set is just the Stealth Fighter set. The 3-piece gives you a battle cloak. Phaser quad cannons are fun to use as well. If you want that, use those things for cosmetic or for funsies with a battle cloak. Otherwise, don't worry about them. The Enterprise D's consoles are all pretty garbage, even though Saucer Separation is definitely fun to use. So there is that as well. The Kelvin Timeline's console Auxiliary Ejection Assembly gives you a lot of bonus exotic damage, plus a nice speed and damage clicky. So it's definitely nice. There is other stuff in its set, but most of us don't really use the other stuff from this Kelvin Timeline set at all, really. For the Enterprise F, we actually have two different sets. The old Tier 5 Odyssey set is not particularly that great. The other one, the Flagship Technology set, is fantastic. The Adaptive Emergency Systems and Flagship Tactical Computer are pretty great as a two-console combo for a lot of mid-range DPS builds, as well as for high-end tanking builds if you have the Timeline Stabilizer from the Critical Science Vessel for the 3-piece bonus for an extra 30% bonus all damage for your Starship, which is pretty substantial for tanks inside of the game. The NX Enterprise, don't worry about the grappler. The Point Defense Bombardment Warhead is really good for Phaser Disruptor and Plasma damage, so having that with the DPRM console is really strong. And that's account unlocked for all Federation and Federation allies now, if you get this pack. As for the Enterprise E, all of these consoles are garbage, don't worry about them unless you want the Battle Cloak. And yes, even though this is technically a taunt console, if you think you want this as a taunt console as a tank, read the entire thing. It's a 10-second taunt. Well, kind of taunt, but the problem is that those last 5 seconds, you can't be targeted, which means that the taunt really doesn't matter the last 5 seconds, and you basically lose all threat those last 5 seconds. It's this last little part is why I don't really like this console at all. The loss of energy damage doesn't matter as much. Getting taunts is nice, but that 5-second last part is why this sucks. Cool? Alright. So for Discovery, the Mycelium Ambush, it's okay. It's really more for fun, is why you would use Mycelium Ambush. Weaponized Helical Torsion is a nice filler phaser console. I don't know how good this clicky actually is though for damage and what it really scales off of. So because this came from the Mirror Discovery, and I never flew that starship. Now for the USS Voyager, the only one here that actually matters is a Ablative Generator. It gives you a significant amount of bonus damage resistance rating. For the minor downside of what's it called? I'm having a brain fart right now. Okay, sorry about that. You get all that bonus damage resistance. At the cost of that, you lose your energy weapons and your shields for that 15 seconds. If you're doing a side torp build, especially on the new long range science vessel that has a 1.25 hull ratio, this doesn't feel quite as bad. And because your resistance is so high, you basically use this console as a survival console on a side torp build. Whenever your shields are basically at nothing, and then the other costs of weapons offline, energy weapons offline. Well, if you're side torp, that doesn't matter, and if you use it whenever your shields are basically gone anyway, that doesn't matter either. As for the USS Enterprise, the Discovery version, reinforcing squadrons is great for if you're wanting a console on a starship to enhance your hangar pets, then this is great. Otherwise, don't worry about it. We don't know if the advanced phaser beam arrays are coming with the Discovery, but if it does, here's basically what it looks like and why it's generally considered the best phaser beam array in the game, outside of course, the Terran Task Force phaser and disruptor beam array. As for the TOS Enterprise, we again don't know if we're getting the twin phaser beam arrays, the TOS phasers essentially, from the ship either. Ionized gas sensor is pretty garbage. Don't worry about her. The ominous device is fine. It's a 20% all damage console that gives you essentially the viral impulse burst clicky ability available to you through the console itself. It does a couple of other extra things too, but that's basically what it does. So, the last part of this video is this 3,000 Zen bundle or discounted 19,500 Zen bundle actually worth it to you? Well, first off, don't buy the premium bundle. Don't buy this bundle unless you're wanting to donate a bunch of Zen to Cryptic Studios, or if you really want that exclusive title. In terms of worth to what you're getting, you're effectively donating a lot of stuff to Cryptic. It's just the way it is. Most of this is once per account as well. The value of the anniversary bundle is the account unlocking aspect of many of the ships in the bundle itself. So, is it actually worth it to you? Well, one perspective is, for instance, if you're a Federation Allied Romulan. Prior to this bundle, these 3 cool starships were not accessible to you at all in any way visually before this bundle. You couldn't fly a Kelvin cruiser, you couldn't fly the NX Escort, and you couldn't fly the TOS colony at all. And yeah, sure, there were other starships before. Like when I made this slide a long time ago at this point, the command and assault cruisers, for instance, weren't accessible to you. They now are, so you don't have to worry about that. But if you also included this aspect of maybe not necessarily the skin, but you could fly a different variant from the C-Store, You can actually exclude all the Dyson Science Destroyers, and now the NX, the TOS, and Kelvin colony as well from this old list here. Which basically means that there's only 6 Federation starships, 6 real ones that are tier 6 anyway, that you still cannot fly as a Federation Allied Romulan. And that is the Atlas, the Kelvin Vengeance, the Veteran Destroyer, that's the Federation version, the Exchange Temporal Science Vessel, Exchange Temporal Destroyer, and the Enterprise J. So if you're wondering, again from that really old slide a long time ago, whether you should still choose Federation or not, if you want to fly one of those 6 starships right here, you're still going to want to choose Federation, or if you want to choose a particular starship for its actual bridge offshore layout that's still not available to Romulans, you'll still want to choose Federation. Otherwise, more and more, this game is basically telling you that you probably should just pick a Federation Romulan from a statistical standpoint. There's still tons of RP reasons to choose Federation though, so don't worry too much about that. Perspective number 2 is the Zen value. Now, I'm not sure if I've gotten into detail on this before, but for tier 6 starships in this game, there are 4 things that bring it value. Number 1 is the performance, base stats, bridge offensive, weapon and console layout. It's why these Starship Comparison videos really exist, so that a lot of you all can basically more easily compare the actual performance of a lot of these starships between one another in an easier, more visual format. Of course, there is the looks via extra skins for a starship, or whatever the starship's base looks actually is, combined with its performance via a starship trait or starship console that you could use on other starships. Now, as we know from the Zen store, full tier 6 starships there cost 900 lobi. The trait and console on its own is 450. So if you average that all out, Cryptic Studios values these 4 aspects all equally. So when you look at these new starships, these 10 starships in this pack, it's 30,000 Zen for 10 starships. So you think, well, yeah, that's 10 C-Store starships. That's like 3,000 each. So we're not getting like any discount whatsoever. And technically, yeah, that's true. Or you could say you're getting ripped off because it lacks a new console. These ships are only worth 75% of the average cost because you're losing that console a bit thing there. So if you multiply by 75% times 10 ships, it's worth $225. And so if you're buying it on sale, technically you're getting like a 13% savings for this very rough math here. Another way to look at it, if you want to look at it through a lockbox lens, which I think is what Cryptic Studios is going for, this 22,500 Zen has shown up on this channel before. Now, I really don't blame you that you probably would have forgotten about it, because it was in another really, really long video, a 2-hour long video, and this one is over an hour at this point now. But on that slot, in one of the slides in here, I talked about the average cost of what it would take to get a starship if you were opening loot boxes, and that number once again happens to be 22,500 Zen. It's a really funny coincidence, but unfortunately, I don't think it actually is. If you're excluding the extra stuff from this pack, and you say that, then you would say it's worth 22,500 Zen. So you basically be comparing these 10 starships here without any of the old consoles or skins or stuff to what you get in a loot box for 22,500 Zen. You get a loot box starship 63% of the time, amount of lobi to get a lobi starship, along with a lot of other filler extra things of debatably various value. A lot of that depends upon what you RNG and end up getting. And so, especially for the sale price, the question is, would you rather have a low-buy starship, have to RNG to get a loot box starship, and get a bunch of other random stuff? Or would you rather have 10 guaranteed starships with full in-game stats, new skins, and new traits that are available to all of your Federation captains? That's, in one way, in a sense, kind of like what you're looking at between loot boxes and the anniversary bundle itself. Now, yes, at full price, 3,000 Zen. Between sale price, you're paying anywhere between 1 and 1.5 times the average price of what it would take to RNG getting a loot box starship out of your various types of loot boxes in this game, albeit being promotion packs or regular lock boxes. And yes, technically, if you let other people pay that price for you and see them sell the ships on the exchange, you don't necessarily have to pay that amount, but someone else in the game did have to pay that 22,500 Zen worth of in-game currency to get that starship for you. I definitely see Cryptic as potentially seeing this gigantic pack, this anniversary pack, as a lockbox inside of the C-store that doesn't have any RNG whatsoever. So effectively, you're paying 1 to 1.5 times that full price of a lockbox to get 10 starships, no RNG, none of that stuff whatsoever. From that perspective, it's not as bad as it could be. So for me personally, though, this is how I'm going to be valuing them. For me, I'm doing each one of these is a quarter of the value, but because in reality, different starships, if you bought them off the exchange and let someone else RNG for you, these are the rough costs that these starships were. Now, yes, as of the making of this video, a lot of these prices have dropped substantially because of the anniversary bundle. We don't know if that's going to be a super permanent drop or if people are just dropping because of speculation, and then it'll rise eventually again over time back to where it was before. I'm using the old numbers from back, in that old SEO economy video, and you can see that video to see where I'm getting my assumptions from. And for those of you that are wondering, $170 is really extreme for a starship. Cryptic is currently selling a starship for that price in Mud's market right now. So it's not like Cryptic doesn't value starships at those absurd levels of pricing. And you're only paying, well, at the discounted price, about $30 more than that to get 10 starships. Now, before I show you the actual Excel document, I'm just showing you where I'm getting the numbers for one starship, for instance, and then we'll show you the whole Excel document. For instance, for the legendary Defiant, to me personally, because I prefer flying the Rising Pilot Corvette, I'm okay losing that forward weapon slot to get an experimental weapon instead, and have a lot more customization and paint jobs and fun stuff to do with the Pilot Corvette over what this ship is probably going to give me. However, both traits sound very well. One I know is really strong, and the other one is probably going to be really strong. So for me, this bundle is worth 2 parts here. So 2 starship traits, $30 times divided by 4 times 2, which means that for me, for rough math, the legendary Defiant is worth about $15 to me. Now, when you extrapolate this out to all the different things for the various types of starships in this pack, and yes, I'm valuing the Legendary Galaxy at $0 here. For me, using all 10 starships, it's worth about $378 the way that they stand right now. If I take out both the Discovery Enterprise and TOS Enterprise, it goes down to about $200, which is about the price of what the discounted amount of this pack actually is. Now, if you want to go super more nitty-gritty for number crunching, there are many other people that have gone in much more depth than I will in this video. In my opinion, the best, at least if not the best, one of the best places to go is a fun little blog called Joa and Stowe. He's done a lot of, it seems like more numbery and analytical stuff talking about Star Trek Online. I like a lot of his posts. Some of the numbers are interesting, but showing his biases and explaining what his reasonings are, I am okay with how he is doing his stuff, and I think it's great. It'd be cool if we had more people like him in the community. I have linked his 3 little blog posts thus far that are talking about the actual anniversary bundle, and once he posts the 4th one, I'll also have that in the description as well for you all to go ahead and check out really easily. It is just a simple WordPress website, so don't expect it to be too fancy, but then again, those of you all that are watching this channel are watching someone who's talking over a PowerPoint. So it's going to be still that type of quality on his website as well. Now for me, I'm just going to be comparing, just for lastly for this part 5, I'll be comparing the Legendary Bundle to the various Mega Bundles inside of the game. Because I feel like that's the fairest apples to apples comparison. We could compare it to expansion packs that are also really expensive, but because it's more than just starships really in those, while if it's Anniversary Bundle versus the other Mega Bundles, it's starship to starship, it's really easy to see the value. So for this pack, you have 10 starships, and they're only for Federation allies, but they're all unique variants with endgame stats. Although you can debatably say that that the TOS Enterprise and the Sovereign are very, very similar in how they function. But they still have unique console bridge after layouts nonetheless, with over 20 trays and 20 consoles among the 10 starships. Every starship feels different. Even though one starship wouldn't necessarily diminish in another's value in this bundle, they all have really varying worths because of what you're getting from them, so it would make it really hard to split this bundle. Now for me, just doing rough math here, with the Anniversary Bundle, if we don't include the old stuff and it's just the new stuff, I would say I probably made some errors in this document because I was rushing this after the last 2 ships came out. But for me, for some rough math here, you know, with the amount of new skins you're getting from these, performance is going to be the same for all, and the amount of traits that you get is various depending upon how many old traits and variants that you had from those. It's on average about $42 a ship when you don't include the old stuff, and if you do include the old consoles, it's around, you know, about $60 a starship on average, with of course the Odyssey taking the cake for having the most value stuff because of how many consoles and traits and looks that you get with the Odyssey. It is a powerhouse with all the old stuff that you get out of it. Now let's compare this for a moment to the Tier 6 flagship Mega Bundle, which is the best Mega Bundle in the game, by the way. So what you get from this, by the way, it's $60 for a 3-pack, $120 for all 9. You only get 3 traits and 3 consoles for buying 9 starships, but each starship has its own unique console and bridge officer layout, and potentially weapon layout as well, which is different for each of the factions. So, for instance, the KDF Tactical Battlecruiser is going to feel different than the Federation's Tactical Cruiser, which is going to feel different than the Romulans' Tactical Dreadnought Warbird. They all feel different, so there actually is a lot of value and incentives to actually fly all these ships rather than just buying the 3 Romulan ships for their traits and just ignoring the rest of the actual Mega Bundle itself. There's actually skills and performance involved with these. So even though by rough cost you would say that these would be worth $30 each, they only would be worth $30 each if they each had their own unique look, performance, trait, and console. That once you buy a second or third tactical variant or engineer variant or science variant, you aren't getting any new traits or consoles with them. So their value is going to be much less than $30. Now to make it easier, the 3-pack, by the way, costs $60. Its value is $90 because you get a trade and console for all of them, which means you end up saving about $30, or you get an extra $30 of value that you didn't have to pay for. Compare this to the 9-pack, which costs $120. Its value is $180, not $270, but $180. So the savings that you basically don't have to pay for, or value you got beyond the cost, was $60. So even without any new traits or consoles with these flagships, the savings is the same ratio and consistent between the 3-pack and the 9-pack, which is why I'm saying there actually is merit to buying the 9-pack of the flagship Mega Bundle. Now, if you buy the Anniversary Bundle, then you do lose value from this Mega Bundle, though, so there is that concern to be made still. Unfortunately, all of the older Tier 6 Mega Bundles do not have this luxury. They have the same traits and same consoles between all of their tactical engineering and science variants, So it's still 3 trays and 3 consoles from 9 starships. And unfortunately, the console and bridge option layout is basically cut and paste from every single one of them. Normally, the Romulan version gets a battle cloak, besides the allied escorts right here. These guys don't have cloaks, unfortunately. These ones actually do get access to dual cannons, even though the other Miracle War Workers cruisers don't get access to dual cannons, so that's unique for these Miracle Worker Warbirds. But basically, for the most part, for these packs right now, other than buying the 3 Romulan starships for that tray for your whole account, the only reason to buy them is really for their different looks. For some people may really value those looks, but others aren't. And so you're gonna have to ask yourself, is that look worth losing a lot of the other things? Because yeah, sure, buying the first Tactical Engineering and Science variant, you're still gonna get the value that you're expecting, but the second and third, doing this very simple pseudo math thing, you're only getting a skim worth out of them. So each of these are only worth $7.50 instead of a full $30. So what this means is that with a 3-pack, you end up paying $60 to get $90 of value. So you basically get $30 of value more than what you paid for. Compare this to the 9-pack. You're paying $120. You're only getting $135 of value. So your savings beyond what you paid for is only $15. The actual savings actually decreases beyond your cost whenever you're buying the 9-pack of all these other mega bundles. This is why ever since Romulans could fly their allied starships, and especially when everyone could fly Romulan starships in the C-Store, I've been telling people for a long time, just buy the Romulan starships. Don't worry about the other ones, or for the 4-pack starships, just buy the Gemini Vanguard one, because then you don't have to worry about a cloak. The Romulan 3-packs are the value ones to get inside of the C-Store. They are the ones to get, and unless you're actually going to fly the other ones, don't buy the other ones at all. And so for some pseudo math to just conclude, if you buy the whole Tier 6 Mega Bundle for most of them, for most of the old ones, they're on average about $15 each. Although you could pay $30 for the individual starship, because there's basically just carbon copy console layouts between them, with only 3 trays of 3 consoles among 9 starships. The flagship Mega Bundle, even though you still have that tray and console limitation, because each of these starships feel different, there actually is merit to actually getting them, and they are worth on average about an extra $5 more because of that unique console and bridge option layouts between all of them. The Anniversary Bundle, because they don't have any of that copying whatsoever, plus with all the extra stuff on them, they're worth about $60 each, but there is no individual ship options available. Each have their own unique console bridge option layout. And based on my rough counting, I'm probably wrong on these numbers, by the way. I counted about 23 trays and 25 consoles among the 10 starships. Actually, I think it's probably 24 traits, actually. Anyway, there are a lot of traits and a lot of consoles among the 10 starships. So there's a lot of stuff here, even though a lot of those traits and all those consoles aren't really worth that much. A lot of traits and a lot of consoles and these other mega bundles also aren't worth that much either. So anyway, just here's 3 sample builds for you all, based upon the ships in this video, with just sample bridge option layouts and starship traits for you all. I also added the Florian Odyssey Firewall tank here. That's adapted to the new Dreadnought cruiser, in case some of y'all were wanting to basically fly his build, but on the new Odyssey. This is exactly what his build would be if you brought all of his bridge option abilities over to this ship. It actually works very perfectly, so it actually is pretty cool and nice, honestly. Then this is just an overload build and a dual cannon build. As for the TLDW for this video, we have a new anniversary bundle that's coming out really soon. The basic version is $300 and the premium version is $450. Ignore the $450, pretend that it doesn't exist. It's initially going to be on sale for a little bit under $200. There's 10 new starships in it with the new trading skin. They're basically rehashes of old starships, with some of them have various changes in their bridge option layouts and console layouts. They're only available to Federation and allies, although the KDF captains do get access to the 10 new Starship traits. In kind of the same way that, you know, with Delta Rising and Agents of Yesterday, the new Starship traits that were only on those Federation starships had account reclaim options on the KDF side. It's gonna be the same way. The downside for this mech bundle is there's not gonna be single Starship purchase options, at least initially, for this. I would imagine personally, because in my very simple evaluation that most of these ships are worth on average $60 each, I would expect no less than that for their pricing, and if they ever do go individual, and it'd probably be limited time individual, probably through Mud's Market is how they're going to probably do it going forward. As for the starships themselves, the biggest standout is the legendary Defiant. It's the first pilot warship that I'm aware of in the game. I probably missed one in there somewhere, but so that's definitely nice for the Defiant. It also has what seems to be an OP energy starship trait available to it. The legendary Sovereign should be a very solid miracle worker beam cruiser inside of the game. And the Kelvin Connie is a 5.3 C-Store, but slightly weaker version of the Kelvin Vengeance. The legendary Odyssey is a slight improvement on the Dreadnought cruiser for the vast majority of players. The Discovery Connie is also available here too, which is nice, which is a temporal version of its flight deck carrier. The TOS and TMP Connie, I consider it as a slightly weaker Sovereign, but I mean, seriously, it's an iconic starship. There's a reason why it's the biggest starship in all the 10 ships here, because it is very iconic. The legendary Discovery should be a Cytorp DPS beast that also has a really nice trait from the Mirror Crossfield that's available to all Federation captains in this pack. Legendary Voyager is a miracle worker science vessel, which is interesting. You'll get an extra console slot. If you want to do Cytorp but want to have a more survival aspect to it, that's going to be your option. I think the vast majority of players would still probably prefer the legendary Discovery for what it's actually giving you. Legendary NX is only really good in my opinion for the old beam overload trait and the old console, the point defense bomber warhead. And the legendary Galaxy, nothing that comes from it is particularly noteworthy in my opinion, although its new skins do look pretty good as well. Anyway, thank you all for watching. Also feel free to thank Cryptic for allowing us on PC to immediately reclaim all of our Admiralty cards for the Admiralty system. So for those that have lots and lots of alts, it's really easy to do the Admiralty system with those characters now. That is definitely a very nice and very highly requested quality of life improvement that Cryptic is doing. Hopefully they continue to do stuff like going forward. As many of y'all have asked me, I don't know how much longer this game's going to go. I'd imagine, you know, as long as stuff like this continues to sell really well, it'll probably go on for another couple of years for sure. Yeah, anyway, thank you all for watching, and enjoy the rest of your day.